Alright, so getting straight into it with these bags, I do want to set some expectations for how we're going to do this. Instead of going over one bag altogether, I'm going to go over the features of each bag and how they compare to each other one by one. So just take note that it might seem a little bit broken up, but the ultimate goal is to try to show you how these features compare rather than simply give an overview of two separate bags. And the first thing I'm going to do is go over the external features, starting with what I consider to be the most important difference between these two bags, and that's going to be how they bear load. Alright, so the way that these bags distribute weight is wildly different from one another and a little bit perplexing on Eberlestock's side of things. So with Mystery Ranch, it's kind of what you would expect from an internally framed pack, which is interesting because this is only 27 liters. One of the big differences with the Mystery Ranch over the Eberlestock is that the Mystery Ranch comes with internal framing. That's this rigid plastic piece right here that you can easily adjust for height up and down. And what that does is that makes your load lifter straps actually work how they're intended to work. So with the Mystery Ranch, when you go ahead and you pay out these load lifter straps and you tighten them down, the weight is better distributed and doesn't put as much strain on your head and your neck. I've used this bag in multiple different movements. I've done a 10-mile ruck with it. I've done some ruck runs with it. I've played, force on force, airsoft, stuff like that. And I've gone on training days and used this bag. But the event that I recently went to helped emphasize the weaknesses of this bag really well, because fighting for an entire day, not being able to take your pack off the entire time because it will be left behind while you're moving over variable terrain, highly emphasizes the fact that this bag has no real rigidity to the internal structure. It's essentially a foam internal frame, so it's meant to bend and contort with you, and over short duration that's not too bad, but over time it starts to wear on you. The load lifter straps do nothing to actually change the load on your neck and shoulders, but rather they simply change the location of the bag on you. So there's still some utility to having them. One of the things I do want to point out about the Eberlestock is that it has like 12 inches worth of webbing here that you can pay out on these load lifters, which is like a massive waste of material. It's way more than you would ever need, and it actually extends so far back that it goes further than the actual bag can pay out. So I don't understand why they had that design philosophy. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be points for the Eberlestock on their carry handle. Alright, the Mystery Ranch has this simple piece of webbing for the carry handle. Eberlestock did a great job of making this nice, thick, padded carry handle. It's easy to grab, it's soft on the hands. This would definitely cut into your hands if you needed to actually move a person with them. So there are points for the Eberlestock in that regard. Now going from top to bottom, we'll talk about how you access the top zip compartments. So the first thing that will stand out about the Mystery Ranch is that the zipper pulls are just 550 cord looped together, which is superior to the way Eberlestock does it, where their zipper pulls are these pieces of cord that are essentially shrink wrapped together. And I've already broken one. As you can see, I've got this 550 cord right here to take up the space that I've broken. I like the fact that Mystery Ranch already has that covered. Additionally, with the zipper portions, Mystery Ranch has like a gasketed watertight zipper, and Eberlestock does not. When it comes to the Mystery Ranch top compartments, there's two, just like with the Eberlestock. There's a slightly larger one that you can put some tools in right here on the top, and then a smaller one for some of your more administrative tools. I've got a lighter in there, pen, notebook, stuff like that. When you unzip the entire bag, it folds inward. So the admin portion on the top folds towards the body of the bag. the way it does it on the Eberlestock is it actually opens the same direction that the rest of the bag opens. And that might not sound like a big deal, but when you have a couple pounds worth of material here on the top, it has a tendency to try to pull itself down and open and then yard sail everything in the bag because of the way that the bag itself opens. So the Eberlestock has this wide open clamshell style opening to it, whereas the Mystery Ranch has the ubiquitous 3-zip. And you're not as likely to yard sale all your stuff because you have to be more deliberate with opening the bag itself. Alright, now talking about the external straps of each one of these bags. With the Eberlestock, there are none to speak of. Alright, that's why I had to rig this bungee right here, this bungee weapon retainer, in order to do my helmet carrying solution, which I talked about in my previous video. With the Mystery Ranch, it's got both of these load carriers, which have some adaptability to them. All right, so you can X them over each other, you can cross them across. That'll allow you to carry different types of loads, whether it be a tent, whether it be a helmet, stuff like that. So that's going to be points for the Mystery Ranch. In terms of the water bottle carriers on each side, the Mystery Ranch kind of loses a point there, because they're too shallow to safely carry something like a Nalgene without worrying about it falling out. And they have no sort of elastic pull tab to tighten them up, whereas the Eberlestock does. The Eberlestock is a little bit deeper, and it's got these pull tabs that you can pull on to really cinch in any water bottle that you have right there. A solution to that is that you can add additional strap material right here, like a bungee or something like that, over here on this PALS webbing, and hold in a water bottle. Speaking of PALS webbing, let's talk about webbing real quick. The Mystery Ranch is your standard bar tacked MOLLE webbing, PALS webbing, whereas Eberlestock made a kind of weird decision here where they did their own version of MOLLE webbing that neither has the same dimensions as any normal tactical pouch out there, nor has the same level of durability as a standard piece of PALS webbing, because it's only got about ½ an inch worth of bar tacking right here rather than about a full inch worth of bar tacking. So they're much more likely to get ripped, and they're not going to comfortably fit any sort of pouch without that pouch wiggling around on you. So going into some of the external features of these bags. Eberlestock and Mystery Ranch had different design philosophies for how people are going to spread the load throughout their bag, and it's evident in how slick the external portion of the Mystery Ranch bag is. They give you the freedom to put your own pouches and stuff externally on here if you want to expand the size and capability of this bag, whereas Eberlestock is very restrictive with where they locate all of their PALS webbing. They only have it on this top panel right here and some on the sides. What they do instead is they rely on multiple different external compartments on the bag for you to put gear into. The problem with that is that these compartments, whenever you put something into them, they push into the bag. There's no additional material on the bag to help pay out that size, so you're essentially going to be carrying the same volume of equipment no matter what you do if you use this as intended, rather than with the Mystery Ranch having the ability to adapt different things to it. You'll also notice that on the bottom of the Eberlestock bag, it's completely slick, whereas the bottom of the Mystery Ranch bag has PALS webbing. So you can do things like you can lash your sleeping system to the bottom of this, whereas with this you have to either carry your sleep system on you or find some alternate solution. Talking about the actual features of the inside of each bag. So with the Eberlestock, they had kind of a perplexing design philosophy between kind of civilian, everyday carry type stuff and military type stuff. They seem to struggle with finding an identity for this bag. For instance, it has an internal compartment right here behind the main bag where you can reach in and you can draw a sidearm. okay? To me, that doesn't make much sense from either an EDC or a duty perspective. I'm personally not interested in keeping a hidden sidearm in my bag at pretty much any time. I recommend keeping sidearms on your person. I think of it as a gimmick. Feel free to disagree with me if you will. It is kind of cool though that it has a magnetized closure right here to help secure that firearm if you so choose to use it that way. Popping open the top compartment of the Eberlestock bag. I have spoken on this before, so I'll be brief. It has multiple different internal portions here for dividers. You've got options for magazines, you've got options for pens, you've got the wide open space, and you have a sleeve right here if you'd like to use that for dividing. For the Mystery Ranch, it's much more straightforward. You have this kind of vented mesh material. It's a bag, you put things in the bag. Same thing for this top compartment. It's a bag, you put things in the bag. Now, my complaint about the Eberlestock, where everything, you know, every compartment ends up pushing in on the main bag, that does apply to your top compartment with the Mystery Ranch. Anything that you put inside this compartment is going to push down on whatever's in the bag. Going into the inside, the Mystery Ranch features equilateral compartments on each side. So it's got a zip portion right here for you to put items into, and it's got a zip portion right here for you to put items into. The same thing with these little sack portions right here. You can put items into these. And then it's got two internal dividing compartments for your stuff like, you could put a Core Performance ice plate on the inside of this, and that can help use convection to lower your overall heat, have that up against your body. And you can put some other materials right here. Now I don't tend to use both compartments on bags that have this kind of divider in it. I tend to use one for a bladder system, and then I kind of flatten the rest of it down, and I use the main compartment for everything else. With the Mystery Ranch, it's very unobtrusive the way that it does that. It really flattens up against the pack. You'll also notice that it has some internal portions that you could use for things like tie downs and stuff for sensitive items. On the bottom of the Mystery Ranch pack, on both the hydration pouches and hidden underneath some PALS webbing right here, are grommets. I've seen people complain about water ingress through those grommets, especially with Mystery Ranch doing things like sealing their zippers against water. I'm not particularly concerned about that because of the way I pack my bag. Everything's essentially waterproof in my bag as it is, because we live in the Southeast where everything needs to be waterproof. The way the Eberlestock handles that is that they use different sections of internal membrane, non-permeable membrane, to try to make it so that the inner compartment is somewhat waterproof. They have no grommets on the bottom, so that could resolve that complaint for some people. So with Eberlestock, we've got this section right here on the sides. We've got the main compartment right here. Eberlestock did do some internal MOLLE on the inside for you to lash things to right here. They also made it kind of a loop texture all throughout the inside in case you want to put some, like a Velcro, like a placard or patches, what have you, on there. I'm not a huge fan of it. This is kind of a suede material, and when this gets weighed down and wet, it increases the overall weight of the bag, and this is quite a heavy bag for its size when it does get wet. So I'm not a huge fan of this kind of suede material, and I feel like it's a bit of a waste of space. Eberlestock does a lot of work on their internal dividers in terms of, if you're a little bit autistic and you like to have things very specifically divided, I could see how this would appeal to you. But for me, it's just not my style. So the way that they have it is that the pouches are offset on either side internally. This is one giant pouch that you can reach into and put things in. So say like my flares or what have you, put them into this pouch. This one has 3 separate small pouches for smaller items, so your knives, your fire starters, what have you, can go into these. And then it's got a smaller portion down here. You could put something like a water filtration kit or something like that there. The internal dividers are gigantic. So just like I said on the Mystery Ranch, where you can fit a Core Performance ice plate, you could do the same thing with this. It's just that there's a lot more material on the bag itself in between you and the ice plate to prevent that cooling effect to happen as there is on the Mystery Ranch. Because of this whole suede covering and the way they designed it. Additionally, it pays out a lot of space. It pushes so far out that it takes up over half of the internal dimension of the bag, and I just found that to be kind of unwieldy and annoying. I want it to be unobtrusive. Whatever my hydration pouch is going to be, I want that to be kind of out of my way and unobtrusive. Like I said, I have several hundred miles in this Eberlestock bag. It does serve a purpose. This and the Mystery Ranch bag essentially cost the same. The last thing I want to harp on, and this is a big thing for me, is going to be that the Mystery Ranch does have a hip belt. The Eberlestock does not come with a hip belt. That's not such a huge deal until you start moving. You're going prone, you're crouching, you're going up and down different elevations, you're shouldering rifles, etc. All the work that you have to do to be a fighting man. Having the hip belt in order to stabilize, better stabilize the pack is very superior to having none at all. Mystery Ranch doesn't come with a way to stow the hip belt internally or anything like that. It's all very, no frills. If you want to stow it, you can lock it up on the inside, tighten it up, and have that up against your lower back. I also found that I got a lot of hot spots in this particular portion of the Eberlestock. Throughout extended movements, I'd get hot spots because these pontoons right here stick out so far into your bag that they rub. So overall, just my philosophy is, for a 24-hour bag, I do want something that if I have to fight in for 24 hours, is as comfortable as possible. But again, I just got this bag. All I can say is why I chose to get it. I can't say whether or not I was fully justified in getting it or not. You're going to have to make your decisions for yourself. But that's all we got between the Eberlestock Switchblade and the Mystery Ranch 2-day salt pack.